Alles gut?
Yeah, hi.
Thanks for coming from Germany to share your experience. I'm really obsessed with one thing nowadays, like a lot of people, large language models. As a software engineer, it's changed my entire field, but also for patient and practitioner. And I see a lot of changes lately and a lot of stories. One thing is sure is that patients are not waiting for us to change this industry. We have teenager using ChatGPT as a confidant. I have a friend, a rugbyman, who had a syndrome on the knee and treating himself using ChatGPT, browsing the literature and so on. And I think the craziest story is this Australian guy, an entrepreneur, you know that one, not a scientist, that treated his dog cancer, synthesized a vaccine using ChatGPT in AlphaFold. So, changing a lot. Maybe can you share a few words about you and what's your craziest story on LLM?
Thanks for having me. Hannes Klepper, founder, CEO of HelloBetter. We help people learn what they can do in order to feel better, very simply put. So digital therapeutics in mental health is the more sort of technical description, if you will. That's where we started. And recently, last year, actually in November, we launched an LLM-based product called Hello here in Paris at a conference. And this is a customized product, an LLM product purpose-built for mental health that acts as a companion to help people deal with everyday mental health challenges. So it's not a medical device that's treating specific digital health disorders, but rather something that helps you when you've got stress with your boss at work, or with your partner, or you're grieving, things like that are of course mental health challenges, and they can be really tough, but they're not necessarily diagnosable conditions, right? Coming back to your questions of what the I don't know whether it's crazy, but yeah, I recently moved into a new apartment, and I can certainly say that using AI has been very helpful in all sorts of ways. From when I was doing some electrical work and trying to not to burn down my house, to picking fabrics for curtains and stuff. So yeah, it permeates all of our lives, right?
And we kind of see the advantage to have like this confidence to be able to talk to him and to have this confidence, but there are also risks. Where do you put the line on where the patient is touching the LLM and when he should not? How do you cope with that at the HelloBetter? How do you do that?
I think the biggest problem is that we don't know what we don't know, right? So the LLM is always confident, and I think we've all made that experience where you've asked it something and it came back with an answer being totally confident this is correct. And then, if you ask it about something that you know very well, then you'll quickly realize that confidence isn't always well warranted. Sometimes it comes back with complete nonsense. I can only recommend that to any of you if you haven't done that. Ask the LLM about your company, and you'll be fascinated what it pretends to know about your company in terms of who your customers are, what revenue you make. I had this experience early on, like a year or two ago, when I asked it, and it was almost all fabricated. Co-founders that didn't exist, investors that didn't exist, customers that didn't exist. All the numbers were wrong. It was literally all gobbledygook. And when you see that, then that gives you a bit of pause when you think about, okay, I ask it about whatever health issue you have, and it'll come back with something, but it's not necessarily all correct. So I think we have to treat it with a grain of salt, and that's why I think it's also good to build these more domain-specific applications that build in some guardrails and double and triple checks of whether what it is that it says actually is helpful. And in mental health, it's particularly difficult for non-experts to discern what's good advice, or because you would not be able to tell apart something that's helpful from something that's actually making people worse.
Yeah, because your biggest competitor is OpenAI on that field. Like, how do you compete with ChatGPT being used daily and daily? And how would you prevent tragic stories that we also heard? What's your opinion on that, and how do you cope with this big competitor that would take the whole market?
I mean, just like with any other AI-based product today, they're not really a competitor, they're a supplier, right? I mean, our products are based on the foundation models. However, the foundation models, if you ask ChatGPT, about a mental health problem, it will probably come back with a laundry list of here's what you should do. But like the whole approach of, you should be doing this is oftentimes, falling flat. Because if it was that easy, we wouldn't have any of these problems, right? Like if all you needed was to hear from someone what you should be doing, then you would just do that. But
what do you do differently than the ChatGPT?
Yeah, so the way we've designed the product is that, it's a multi-agent setup where you have different agents that serve different purposes. Where you have one agent that comes up with like a psychologically sound approach of, how to respond, and then maybe one that checks that whether that's easy to understand, and one that, makes sure that what, respond is safe, and also, if checks whether there's anything concerning in the input that came from the user that should, set off some sort of alert. So there are guardrails, but the core difference, I think, is that sort of psychological framework that doesn't, as I said, sort of you try to just use a shortcut from A to B, and it's like, okay, you're here today, this is what you need to do to get to B, but rather asks probing questions, and kind of prompts you to think about things and also to challenge your own assumptions. So not just, as most LLMs do, blindly validate everything that you're saying, and you're always right and you're always brilliant, but oftentimes your own underlying assumptions about yourself or the world out there are what keeps you stuck. And so challenging those assumptions to, hey, have you thought about it from this perspective, is much more helpful than A, telling you you're always right, and B, telling you this is what you need to do. And
speaking of validation, so you are the leader of the DIGA program in Germany, so digital therapeutics reimbursed medical device, and with scientific proof, clinical proof. How do you cope with LLM being medical device? Is it one?
So I think it's important to differentiate. So our core products today, which we make most of the revenue with, are these digital therapeutics. They are thoroughly validated. We've run 30 randomized controlled clinical trials over the years that have been published in peer-reviewed journals. I think we're number 2 at this point, but globally in terms of the published RCTs. There's another German company that's doing a lot of research. So interestingly, Germany has been early to this, and there's been a lot of research that was done. And those are medical devices, and they are essentially, it's a treatment program. It's a bit like an online course experience where you learn what you can do in order to feel better. We kind of take you by the hand, and if you think about like Weight Watchers, for example, that helps you lose weight, we do that for your mental well-being. And those products are treatment products that treat diagnosed mental health conditions that have been diagnosed by a doctor that's written a prescription for you, and then your health insurance covers the cost of those programs. And then the LLM-based product Ello that I mentioned, that's not a medical device, it's a wellness solution that doesn't treat in mental health conditions yet, but eventually, of course, building some sort of AI therapist that takes into account all of the learnings that we generate now being in the wellness space, that's probably the end goal for the sector, right? That you have something that's good enough and validated enough to become a medical device. And one of the challenges, of course, the technology that, in medical device regulation, you have this intended use statement where you say, okay, this is what it has to do, this is what it does, and well, it's only doing that. That is hard to do with black box LLM technology, so you kind of have to define the use case, and then also you limit the capabilities. And I think so striking the right balance between making it so limited that it's just as good as a rule-based chatbot and kind of uninteresting and very predictable, and on the other hand, giving it free rein to do whatever, but then also come up with a lot of nonsense. I think there we'll have to find a balance, and that's also something that I think the regulatory frameworks will have to evolve to go from the technology that we've known to finding a way to allow us to incorporate this technology, which is very powerful. I mean, we can't keep this out of people's hands due to regulation forever, because then they'll just use completely unregulated products that are much less safe.
Yeah, and that could be a mode as well.
Yeah.
I think we are out of time. We started at 10 minutes. Do we have Deborah? No? Yeah.
It says zero. So
it says zeros.
But I think it said zero from the beginning, so I
makes
think
sense. So yeah, we didn't speak about the European market, but if you want to share the experience on the different market in Germany and France, I think I encourage you to talk to Hannes at the cocktail if you stay. And that's it for us. A big round of applause for Hannes.
That was quick.